Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show, which I am calling George Tells a Long Convoluted Joke, which in the end is ultimately very funny and leaves you with gut-busting laughter. I am George, and here's the joke. This one is an oldie but a goody that was told to me by my sister. She told it to me when she was in a car. I think she might have been driving, so maybe it wasn't that safe of a joke, but it's still a good one. Okay, here we go. Here's the joke. So, there is a town called Trinity in some place in Europe. I don't know. You think of where you want it to be in Europe. It's in the past sometime. But the people in this town, or the town of Trinity, they're called the Trids. And they have a good life, idyllic life in this little European village. It's somewhere, I don't know. Somewhere where they speak English just for the purposes of my storytelling. But you can also imagine that I'm translating everything they say, and they could be speaking any language, really. So, the village of Trinity, the town of Trinity, these people are the Trids, and they live there, and they farm, and they harvest things, and they have cows and sheep and horses and all that fun stuff. There's a cobbler, there's a blacksmith, and a library even. But one day, this idyllic life of theirs is disrupted by an evil giant. Oh no! It's not that all giants are evil, it's just that this one giant is evil. And he's not really even evil, he's just kind of lazy and kind of doesn't want to do work, which I guess is a sin, so maybe he is evil. But anyway, he comes into the village of Trinity, and all the Trids are like, oh no, a giant! But maybe he's friendly. He's not friendly. What he does is he goes and he starts breaking all the buildings the way Godzilla would do, except he's a giant and they don't know who Godzilla is, so the way a giant would do. And so he goes and he starts destroying things and demands that they supply him with food and shelter and all that stuff because he's lazy. So they gave him the sheep and stuff so he can eat them, and the cows that they slaughter. And also he uses the sheep for all their wool because he likes to knit. He's a very... he likes his pastimes as giant, so he knits a lot, and he needs a lot of wool because giant knitting needles they're giant. So he goes and he takes up residence up on a hill above the town of Trinity, because up on this hill he can oversee everything, and also it's kind of like a nice little cave situation and everything. So that's where he kind of oversees. So now the quality of life in Trinity has really decreased. It's not good at all anymore because they're starving and they have no wool. So now they can't knit their sweaters, and it's getting cold wherever this is in Europe. But one day, much to their luck, a traveling rabbi comes through town doing the things that he does. Much like in the movie Robin Hood Men in Tights, this rabbi could also be played by Mel Brooks, but maybe he isn't. Maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know him. Anyway, so he's going and he's traveling, and he heard tale of these Trids, these people in the town of Trinity, and he heard that their life was pretty good. They had nice pastures, they had sheep, they had cows, they had horses, they had a cobbler, and they had a blacksmith. They were all happy, and especially since they could read books in their library. But he comes into town and everything just is bad. They're all sad. The color grading has turned to dark gray and kind of sepia tone. It's all bad in this town of Trinity now. And he goes up to some people and asks them what's wrong. And they tell him, well, you see, Mr. Rabbi, whatever his name is, a giant has moved up into a hill, and he's taking all our food and everything, and he's destroying our buildings like Godzilla, but we don't know who that is when we say no to him. So we can't say no to him. And anytime we try to go up and say no to him, he just kicks us down the hill, He just takes us in a boop, like a football, except we don't know what football is. Also, we're in Europe, so that doesn't make any sense, because football to us is soccer. Anyway, he just kicks us down, and then we hurt our crowns, and that happened to Jack and Jill, and they didn't have fun. So we don't send people up there to talk to him. We kind of have to shout at the bottom of the mountain and let him know when things are coming up. And the rabbi goes, well, that's bad. I don't like that. I'm a rabbi. He's got to listen to me. I can speak to this giant. So the rabbi then goes up, and he goes up to the top of the hill, trepidatiously. He's walking up, and as he walks up, he stops, and then the giant turns around. He's like, he's knitting on top of the hill, and then he turns and he sees the rabbi, and the rabbi says, oh, Mr. Giant, why are you hurting these people? And then the giant begins to talk to him, and they have a nice conversation. They talk. The rabbi is able to talk some sense into the giant. he's able to tell him what the trids are feeling and get him to sympathize, and maybe he's like, hey, Giant, maybe you could. I mean, you don't have to make your hobby into a business because that's capitalism and that sucks. But you could sell your nice woolen sweaters, or you could knit. Since you have giant knitting needles, you can make some pretty cool stuff for the not the normal size, because you're a normal size for a giant, but the people down in Trinity. Like, you could cohabitate, you could have a nice thing going, and all that fun stuff. So the giant eventually comes around and realizes, and they have a nice conversation. And as the rabbi leaves to go, he starts walking on the hill, but he stops and he thinks for a moment. And he turns back to the giant, and he walks back up the hill. He kind of does a half jog, and he gets to the top of the hill again, and he looks at the giant, and he says, Mr. Giant, I talked to the trids, and they said they couldn't talk to you because every time any of them came up here, you just knocked them down, you just kicked them down the hill. Why'd you let me talk to you? I don't understand it. And the giant just looks down at the rabbi, laughs, and says, ha, 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 silly rabbi. Kicks are for trids. All right, thank you. That is my time. That is my long convoluted joke, which is ultimately very funny and leaves you with gut-busting laughter. I've been George, and have a good night.